Hello everyone and good evening. I'm Don Arleth and it's 8 o'clock p.m. local time here in Warsaw. And coming to you live, you're watching our main edition of World News Tonight here on TVP World. Coming up, Beijing has been dealt a significant blow by Europe. EU member states have agreed to impose tariffs on Chinese electric cars, as the bloc is the largest market for these vehicles. We'll have more on that in just a moment, but first up, let's take a look at tonight's headlines. The emergency flood bill has come into force and is expected to deliver much-needed help to Polish flood victims. At least 177 Ukrainian prisoners of war have died in Russian captivity. And the Georgian parliament has passed a controversial anti-LGBTQ law. Slap in the face for Chinese EV manufacturers. Most EU member states have greenlit tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles. They will be as high as 45% and will cost manufacturers billions of euro. Beijing has already protested the decision, whereas Brussels accuses China of using state subsidies to artificially lower prices of EVs and take market share from European automakers.
It's official. EU member states want import duties on Chinese electric vehicles, some of them as high as 45%. This move is said to be aimed at protecting the market from what are considered unfair practices by the world's second-largest economy.
We do not, and we never have wanted to, impose tariffs in this case for the sake of imposing tariffs. What we want is to remove the injurious subsidisation, the effect of the injurious subsidisation that our painstakingly detailed, WTO-compatible and thorough investigation identified.
Nevertheless, the vote highlighted divisions within the EU. The vote was held behind closed doors, but according to preliminary reports, only 5 member states, including Germany, Europe's largest automotive maker, opposed the decision. 10 countries, including Poland, voted in favour. The European Commission has expressed hope that a solution can be reached through negotiations, which could be done by setting minimum prices rather than imposing tariffs, something that China is also seeking to accomplish. If a consensus isn't achieved, there are fears that the EU's second-largest trading partner could retaliate. However, the Ministry of Economic Development told TVP World that this shouldn't be a major concern.
The decision taken together by the Council today levels the playing field and has strong grounding in WTO rules. Therefore, we do not fear repercussion in any way that would be deemed detrimental to the general trade regulations or the prosperity of any of European sectors.
While the decision aims to protect the industry, it could also hinder the EU's ambitious goals for the decarbonisation of road transport.
7-8 years ago, we expected in those days that in 2025, more or less 20-25% of the total total registration in Europe will be electric vehicles.
Currently, this figure is around 10% lower, and restricting access to cheaper alternatives will not accelerate this progress.
Poland has a long road ahead after facing one of its worst natural disasters in more than 2 decades. Now, those hardest hit by the floods are set to receive wide-ranging support from the government. Our chief political correspondent, Aaron Daman, has more.
2 weeks after wild weather first devastated Poland, for some it's still all too much.
The water took everything, the furniture. I don't know if I'll save the fridge. I don't have where to wash my clothes.
In the Opole region, locals will have to move into container homes.
The number of people in need of container homes is constantly growing as we're carrying out inspections and subsequent homes are being excluded from the possibility of habitation.
And as parts of the country enter recovery mode, businesses have also seen their income and livelihoods shattered.
The insurance assessor I hired evaluated the losses at 63,000 euros. For the time being, we've received roughly 200.
But now, a lifeline from Warsaw. In the last 24 hours, Polish President Andrzej Duda signed off on a special amendment bill to help flood victims, which had already passed through the Sejm Senate. Employees will get a maximum of 20 days of extra paid leave to clear property, and a ban on Sunday trading has been lifted in post-flood areas for basic necessities. Affected families will receive an emergency benefit of about 230 euros to meet the needs of children in education. And for those eligible, the same amount is available to cover the costs of drying out their apartment or house. Even with this support, it's clear the cleanup will take years and cost billions.
The bill is crucial. Without this bill, these people would be left alone. So this is very important for them to bring some assistance for them to reorganize their lives, their everyday lives that changed in one day.
And for Włodzimir Szendronów, the hope is that there is more assistance to come.
Oh well, you'll have to keep on living somehow.
Polls show the majority of people in this country feel positively about the government's flood response, but there's also been fierce political criticism of Donald Tusk's coalition. Behind me is the presidential palace, and with a presidential election next year, voters will be watching every step and misstep of those in power. In Warsaw for TVP World, I'm Aaron Darman.
As the war in Ukraine drags on, increasingly more people are needed to keep Kyiv's war effort going. That's why the Ukrainian Defense Ministry has set up its first military recruitment center in Poland, ahead of one of the toughest periods of the war, which is just around the corner, and that is winter.
In hopes of getting more people to join the Ukrainian army, Kyiv's going out of its way to recruit soldiers outside of their borders. The latest recruitment center to be opened outside of Ukraine is the one in Lublin. It mainly calls on Ukrainians living in Poland to join the fight while remaining fully voluntary. To make sure the process of recruitment is as smooth as possible, the office remains open from 9 to 5 local time every single day, without breaks. Those brave enough to join are equipped with state-of-the-art gear, coached for 35 days, and then sent off to train with soldiers from other NATO countries before finally arriving on the battlefield. Citizens of some NATO countries, however, aren't all too pleased with having to constantly support Ukraine in its fight against Russia. Berlin saw thousands of protesters march through its streets, calling for the cessation of arms deliveries to Ukraine by Germany. Poland itself is also bolstering its military capabilities. Polish Minister of Defense Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz said Warsaw will spend almost 187 billion zloty on defense in 2025, which is around 4.7% of the country's GDP. While Kyiv waits for new recruits and equipment to strengthen its armies, Ukrainian civilians are bracing for a cold winter. As the cold closes in on Ukraine with each passing day, Russian artillery continues to pound the Ukrainian power grid.
In the latest attacks, we have seen the devastation getting worse and that we can be killed. All of the equipment was burned.
Not much time remains before Ukrainians will have to turn their heating on, and President Volodymyr Zelensky is aware of this.
Now, before winter, it is very important to accelerate the implementation of all existing projects, protective energy projects, community security projects, for schools, for hospitals. At all levels, we must be effective in Ukraine, in relations with our partners, and with our partners in understanding the prospects.
The inevitable arrival of winter has also given rise to fears of further migration of Ukrainian citizens into Europe. With EU members being less open to new arrivals than ever, some experts say a new wave of Ukrainian refugees could become a serious problem in the near future.
At least 177 Ukrainian prisoners have died in Russian captivity since the beginning of Moscow's full-scale invasion, says a representative of the Ukrainian Coordination Center for the Treatment of Prisoners of War. We're now moving to Kyiv, where our correspondent Oz Chatterjee joins us. Good evening, Oz. Now, what more do we know about these new Russian war crimes, and do we know how many Ukrainians are currently held in captivity?
So no, short answer, we don't know exactly how many Ukrainians are being held in captivity. And I presume that the government has some idea, but that's not a figure that's currently available in the public space. We do know that this statement was prompted by the Ukrainian prosecutor general speaking about the execution of 16 Ukrainian POWs who were captured recently at the end of September on the battlefield near Pokrovsk. Now, the prosecutor general says that of the 177 deaths within Russian custody, 93 of those are battlefield executions. And of the total number of deaths, the Ukrainian prosecutor general currently has 84 cases outstanding that are being investigated for potential war crimes. So it must be said that executing POWs is a war crime under the Geneva Convention. So the Ukrainian government's taking this very seriously. The Ukrainian prosecutor general is taking this very seriously. Obviously, this is an issue that's causing massive concern here in Kyiv, here across the country, but also to the international community about the way countries conduct warfare. And if Russia is recording battlefield executions, it does make the people here think if they're look at what you see when they are recording. What are they doing when they're not recording? So more grave issues here to do with POWs being highlighted by the Ukrainian government in regards to the treatment of their soldiers who've been captured by the Russians.
All right, Oz Chatterjee reporting from Kyiv there. Thanks for your report. Georgian president's veto against a Russian-modeled anti-LGBTQ law has been overruled by the ruling Georgian Dream Party. The law comes into force just 3 weeks before the general election. In response, the EU's ambassador to Georgia said that there would be no high-level contacts within the current Georgian government.
Designed to boost support among a conservative society, the bill adopted by Georgia's pro-Russian government bans gender transitions and could outlaw pride marches and the rainbow flag.
Every action made by the Georgian Dream Party is oriented on the mobilization of potential voters.
The parliament, dominated by the Georgian Dream Party, approved the bill last month. It argued the law was necessary to protect Georgia's Orthodox Christian Church. The law's similarities with legislation adopted in Russia has not gone unnoticed.
A total ban for legal gender recognition, a total ban for gender-affirming care from transgender people. It will be impossible to recognize same-sex unions.
Although Georgia's president Salome Tsurabishvili refused to sign the bill into law, Parliament overthrew the decision.
The Georgian Dream, as the party is called, is really introducing Russia-like laws like the anti-agent, anti-LGBT. Is this not going to be a threat to your integration with the West?
Well, it is. This trend of the Georgian authorities has started like 2 or 3 years ago, maybe at most, in a very first slow but then accelerated manner. The rhetoric has become more and more aggressive towards our partners and more complacent towards Russia.
The anti-LGBT law is one in a series of controversial bills. A different one requires groups that receive funds from abroad to register as foreign agents. Both of these laws have been condemned by EU officials.
If basic human rights, not to mention the rights of minorities, are not protected, Georgia will not be able to become a member of the EU today, nor tomorrow, or the day after tomorrow.
Even if Georgian opposition wins these elections, the Russian influences won't disappear from Georgia. Their presence.
October 26th will be a decisive day for Georgians. Despite opinion polls show that Georgians are supportive of joining the EU and NATO, the Georgian Dream Party maintains a lead over a fragmented opposition.
There are warnings tonight that large-scale Russian interference in Moldova's upcoming presidential election may be a test run for further widespread meddling in next year's parliamentary elections. Police say pro-Kremlin forces have bribed more than 130,000 voters in a sweeping plot to disrail Chisinau's bid for closer EU ties. Here's more.
Moldova's Maia Sandu on the campaign trail, seeking a second term in the presidential poll later this month. The vote will be held alongside a referendum asking Moldovans whether the country should be able to join the European Union. It's now emerged that pro-Russian groups have bribed more than 130,000 Moldovans to vote against the referendum.
A great number of voters could have been bribed, and given the country's relatively small size, this number is definitely not insignificant.
Analysts say the pro-Russian opposition is divided, giving Sandu a strong chance. But Moscow is likely using the poll as a dry run for next year's parliamentary vote.
Russia sees this election, this presidential election, as a test of strategy, just to check if what kind, for example, of messages to Moldovan society will work.
A number of regional leaders have been banging the EU drum. Poland's PM Donald Tusk visited Chisinau last month. They're concerned Moscow could derail Moldova's EU hopes. Analysts say Russia is honing its disinformation campaigns around the LGBTQ community and the threat of being dragged into Russia's war with Ukraine, and could deploy them in the EU.
And to fight that kind of disinformation and propaganda is very, very hard. It's not a problem also in Moldova, which is rather poor and state with weak institutions, but we also have that problem in the European Union.
Police say $15 million have been transferred in September alone to accounts opened at a Russian bank to push Moscow's messages. Voters head to the polls on October 20th.
Belarus is facing a high-level probe from the International Criminal Court as Lithuania pushes for the country to be held accountable over alleged crimes against humanity under authoritarian leader and self-proclaimed President Alexander Lukashenko. The court's lead prosecutor has revealed that he will conduct a preliminary examination into the claims. Meanwhile, hundreds of political prisoners remain behind bars. Some of them, like Serhiy Tsikhanouski, was sentenced to 18 years in prison for trying to challenge Lukashenko in the 2020 elections. Now I'd like to welcome his wife, the president-elect of Belarus, Svetlana Tsikhanouskaya. Hello, and thank you very much for joining us today on World News Tonight.
Hi.
Now, Lithuania is pushing for Lukashenko to be held accountable for his crimes, for the political repressions of Belarusians. Exactly what does this entail, and what needs to be determined by the court in order for them to indict Alexander Lukashenko?
So the case that Lithuania sent to International Criminal Court is about forced deportation of Belarusian people. In our case, forced deportation means that Lukashenko's regime provided such level of repressions that people have to leave Belarus, and Lithuania affected by this massively, deported people. The same as Poland, actually, and we, of course, welcome in and encourage Poland to support this initiative, the same as other countries, because we should send clear signal to Lukashenko regime that all the crimes will not be left uncountable. So Lukashenko has a long list of crimes. It's crimes of torture, abduction of Ukrainian children. It's about migration crisis, of course, that affect Poland a lot, hijacking of airplane, dragging Belarus into the war. But in our case, we can start special investigation on this crime because Belarus is not part of Rome Statute at the moment. We can't seek for justice, ourselves. But Lithuania used its right, to bring Lukashenko to court. So now it will be only preliminary investigation, and now ICC will decide if to open special case or not. So that's why support of other countries are so important.
Right, and that's exactly what I would like to ask. Considering Poland, for instance, is the Polish government considering joining this case along with Lithuania, and are there other countries that are interested?
So right after Lithuania did this, we got clear message, official message from Minister of Foreign Affairs that they politically are supporting us a lot, the same as always for these 4 years. And now we are having consultations with the Ministry of Justice for them to put it into practical track.
The abduction of Ukrainian children. Vladimir Putin's already been indicted by the International Criminal Court for this, and Alexander Lukashenko has a role in abducting Ukrainian children. Can you tell us what that role is, and where is the International Criminal Court on this specific crime?
So as for abduction of Ukrainian children, since the beginning of the war, we also collected evidences that Ukrainian children from occupied territories were brought to Belarusian territory. The fate of many is unclear, but we're still collecting evidence. So in this case, we are cooperating with our Ukrainian counterpart, and I know that already Ukrainian Freedom House organizations, they also appeal to International Criminal Court regarding this crime, abduction of Ukrainian children. So we will see how this case will be followed. But again, for Karim Khan to understand that this is a very important case, more countries have to be engaged.
Since Belarus isn't part of the Rome Statute, how does this influence the potential outcome of a potential indictment or any action that the ICC takes?
Lithuania and Poland and any other country can use its right, to speak on behalf of other country if your countries are affected by the situation in Belarus, and this is our case. So this is what's going on at the moment. But I absolutely sure that after democratic changes in Belarus, Rome Statute will be the first document ratified by new government.
And concerning other European governments, what should they do to put more pressure on the Lukashenko regime? I mean, obviously, we've been discussing this for a long time now. Are you for cutting off commercial trade? Where exactly do we stand on this? Because I know that there were some protests some time ago about blocking the trade coming out of Belarus. Where's the Polish government on this, for instance?
So Polish government is one of the most firmly standing for principled position regarding Lukashenko regime. Punish regime, help people. And Poland is advocating a lot for imposing additional sanctions, for additional pressure on Lukashenko's regime. We are supporting our democratic partners with information how, for example, sanctions are being circumvented, so close the loopholes that exist. Also, we provide information how Belarusian regime helping Russia with the different military equipment. They really reoriented many civic enterprises, to produce military stuff for the war. So impose sanctions on these organizations as well. Also sanctions on those people who are guilty in multiple crimes. These perpetrators, judges, prosecutors, propagandists. There are still much space, to have this pressure. It's not only about economical isolation, it's about political isolation, it's a policy of non-recognition, and I don't see any change in foreign policy of the Republic of Poland, regarding this regime. And simultaneously, we see how Poland is supporting Belarusian civil society, supporting our political and cultural initiatives, for example. You are the most welcoming country for Belarusians, and we are so grateful for this. And you have powerful leaders, powerful people actually who understand our pain, and having such allies, we know that we will win this fight. Of course, looking to your Solidarność movement, we realize that it might take a long time. Hopefully not, but it might. And we hear from different ministers, from your leadership, a strong position that you will be with us till the victory.
There's a new position that's been created, special representative of the Polish Foreign Ministry for contact with the democratic forces of Belarus. And actually, Artur Michalski, the former Polish ambassador, his X account has been deemed extremist by the Lukashenko regime. How do you think this office is going to help the democratic opposition? Have they been helpful so far? And what do you think the potential is for this new office?
First of all, I have to say that Ambassador Artur Michalski was always a huge friend of Belarus. But it's ordinary strategy of the regime to declare channels as extremists, prohibiting Belarusians to read any news. So it means that Pan Michalski's media, they were very popular. The next step might be that they will declare him personality, as extremist, because it's ordinary case for us. I'm also extremist, and a terrorist and so on and so forth. Maybe it's the first time when regime did it to diplomat, but there is no end of stupidity, this regime. But special envoys play a huge role in the relationship between countries and our democratic movements, because it's also principal position of many countries don't send ambassadors to Minsk, not to legitimize regime, but let's formalize relationship with democratic forces. Let's say a special envoy. It's like bridge between us and the country. In the case of Poland, for example, we have very open relationship with the government, but ambassador, played huge role in communicating with our civil society. He always was so engaged, knowing what we are doing, how we are structured, and when administration or parliament need advice about Belarus, he was always had full information.
And finally, I'd like to ask about your husband. Sergei has been in jail for many years. He still has many years on his sentence left. For right now, when was the last time you talked to him? What is his status, his situation?
No, the situation with political prisoners is dramatic. Many of our beloved, our friends, are kept incommunicado, including my husband. I haven't heard from him for more than 500 days. No letters, no communication, no lawyers, so nothing. But those who are not in incommunicado mode, they also, endure very, difficult situation in prisons. They are deprived of many medical aid. We have people who are literally dying, people with cancer, diabetes, and these people have to be released immediately. But of course, we are fighting for the release of all of them, including our common hero, Belarusian Polish, Andrzej Poczobut, who feel spiritually so strong, in the prison. He inspires us all. But of course, people who have served their terms already and have been released, they are in very bad physical and emotional state. They need rehabilitation, very long rehabilitation, and years in prison deprive your life energy. So it's an urgent question, to release our people.
Well, I hope the governments of Europe and beyond and international institutions continue to put pressure on the regime and there is some resolve here. Svetlana Tsikhanouskaya, President-elect of Belarus, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
And that concludes this edition of World News Tonight. Thank you for joining us and stay with us for more here on TVP World.